In tonight's pre-election segment, we talk with one of the candidates for Suffolk County District Attorney in the Democratic primary on September 4th. And we'd like to welcome back Rachael Rollins. Thank you very much for being with us.
You bet. Thank you.
Rachel, talk a little bit about your background. I mean, you've been in the U.S. Attorney's Office. You were the first female general counsel for the MBTA. You've been in the downtown practice. So with that kind of a background, you could be doing other things. Why do you want to be a DA?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I have been really fortunate. I've been a lawyer for 21 years. I've been a prosecutor, a criminal defense attorney, a civil rights lawyer, and I could be doing other things, but I believe my talents are best suited in this job. I think we have an opportunity for the first time in almost a lifetime. We don't have an incumbent in this role. We have an opening in this seat, and I'm excited about my prospects of being the next DA and changing not only the face of what law enforcement looks like in Suffolk County and Boston, but also just the mindset of moving away from mass incarceration, criminalizing poverty, mental illness, and addiction, and some of the other things we do.
Well, talk about addiction, because how would you change the way the caseload is handled as far as people who have these drug abuse problems?
Well, for many of the people, your watchers, your viewers, anyone who's driven by Mass Ave and Melnia Cass sees that we have a very significant problem. But these people are hurting. We need to look at what the root cause is of some of these problems, but we also need to make sure that they're getting services, not sentences, I like to say. And although we have Boston police in that particular area that are very helpful to them, unfortunately, what we're seeing is some of those individuals are getting arrested as a result of their behavior, end up with a Corey, and that's sort of sending them down a spiral that's not helpful to them. We need to fund services for these individuals. And I don't believe that Nashua Street or the Suffolk County House of Correction is the place that they should be getting that. Not only because it's not humane and they aren't getting the services, it's also not fiscally responsible. You know, in order to house people in certain houses of corrections or departments of corrections, it's almost $64,000 a year to do that in some places. That money is better spent elsewhere. And I think if we divert those cases or just reject them outright and say to the mayor, we need you to either build that bridge to Long Island, and I know there might be some people that don't like that, but we need services for these people, and they shouldn't be getting them in jail.
We're hearing from the candidates, a lot of them at least, no prison time for nonviolent drug offenders, but at the other end of the spectrum, I mean, we're not talking about quiet drug dealers, sneaky people. We're talking about people who take over a whole street or maybe a floor of an apartment complex. What do you do about them? Yeah,
I believe that there's also people differ on what violence means, right? Like, is there, I personally think that every community deserves to feel safe. And what is not okay is if people in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan are afraid to walk out of their apartments because there are individuals selling drugs or engaging in crimes right in front of them. We need to make them safe as well. Jail does not necessarily have to be what the answer is for some of those, whether it's a diversionary program or whether they are appropriate for a restorative justice initiative or program there. But we need to, I think, be open to different solutions aside from just sending people away to jail. But I have no problem saying, as a prosecutor, there are going to be some people, if you're violent, you need to be removed from our community. I've done that before. I do think you need somebody in this role who is comfortable saying that they are a prosecutor. It is a prosecutorial role, and that if people are violent, they'll be removed. I think we keep them away for too long and we don't do enough with them when they're there. And that's where I differ from some of the other people in the race as well.
Well, we already have, under the current DA, some alternatives to prison sentencing for juvenile offenders. Would you change that in some way, at least in terms of the quantity of people?
Sure. I believe the JAR program is what you're talking about, and I think District Attorney Conley has done a very good job with respect to that program. What I don't like is you have to opt into that program. I think of over 900 juveniles that were eligible, only 64 or so were actually in the JAR program, according to statistics I've been given. That's a problem to me. I believe if we have great programs, you should have to opt out or be opted out. What's wonderful about the new criminal justice reform bill that just was signed into law by Governor Baker is that there are great expansions to diversion programs in the law now. So we are not only going to be looking at diversion for juveniles, we can do it for individuals that are older than what the age of juvenile, the range of a juvenile is right now. So I think that's exciting. I'm also happy to be talking to Senator Brownsberger, who's endorsed our campaign. He was the chief architect of this criminal justice reform bill. I think those are steps in the right direction. The DA is going to take the ball over the proverbial goal line, I hope, and move us to a more progressive system.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Rachael Rollins, candidate for Suffolk County District Attorney. Rachael, all of the candidates are talking about this enormous racial gap in unsolved homicides. And how do you see yourself changing that?
Well, I like that people are finally talking. And part of what I want to say to you is, you know, there are 5 Democratic nominees or candidates right now. 3 of us are women and 3 of us are people of color. And what I'm happy to say is the district attorney's office, for the first time in 16 years under Dan Conley, now has a diversity committee. So stepping up and getting involved in the process does change things. I wish there had been a diversity committee there 16 years ago. I'm happy to see there is one now. We need to talk about this out loud. Race is a very serious topic. It's something that is the root cause to many of the problems we're seeing across the country and certainly here in Boston. And what I am going to do is not only speak about it, but I'm going to demand that our office adequately reflect the rich history of Suffolk County. And that's not just based on race, it's based on age, and it's based on language and ability and orientation. That office does not appropriately reflect the community it's sworn to protect and serve.
You've said there's a staggering lack of diversity.
Staggering, yes. And what I will say to you is, according to numbers I have been given, approximately 275 employees in the office, 150 of them are assistant district attorneys, 131 of them are white. They're excellent lawyers, I'm sure. They work incredibly hard, you bet. However, that's 87% of the ADAs in that office are white. I challenge you, sir, to walk into a Boston Municipal Court or any court in Suffolk County, and I don't think the percentages are the same when you look at who defendants are. And what I think we need is training. I think we need training in implicit bias. I think we need training in trauma. I think we need training in the communities that these individuals are inserting themselves into, so that they understand where it is that they're working and who it is that they're dealing with. Because I am the one out there knocking doors, thousands of doors. And what I hear from people is they don't understand us. They think we're all the same. Whether that's true or not, perception is reality to people. And what we need is for this office to better reflect the community it's sworn to protect and serve.
I want to ask you about police oversight. Currently, if there is a fatal police shooting in the county, the DA's office investigates to see whether there should be criminal charges. Should that be changed in terms of who does the investigating and even the scope of the investigation?
You bet. I've said this from the beginning. I have been present when the DA has presented to the community. I currently sit as the chair of legal redress for the Boston branch of the NAACP. But I think it is improper, candidly, to have the same DA's office that walks hand in hand with the police every day into court to present cases and evidence and find people, guilty or have trials with these individuals as our witnesses, for us to then pretend that we are not biased when we stand in judgment of whether or not their behavior was reasonable. I have said from the beginning, sir, I want an outside group of former prosecutors, criminal defense attorneys, civil rights lawyers, retired judges, retired law enforcement, almost like an NTSB Go team, that if there's an officer-involved shooting, these individuals will do that. One or 2 or 3 of them will be sent out to do the investigation. They will report directly to me, because I like to remind people the DA does not try cases. She sets policy and procedure and the culture of the office and is the outward-facing person of the office. Dan Conley hasn't tried a case in 16 years. He's running an office.
Now, of course, to bring about this change, you probably have to get some other officials on board, maybe even elected officials. Can you see yourself making that work?
You think in order for me to change that internal policy, I need elected officials?
You don't think that you need any
Absolutely
sign of...
not. No. The DA has the power to do that investigation. It would still be under my jurisdiction. I would just have a group of outside lawyers investigating that. And that's a great question, sir, because I don't think a lot of people realize the DA reports to no one but the voters. So the U.S. Attorney, Andy Lelling, reports up to Attorney General Sessions, who reports up to President Trump. The DAs, all 11 of us, we report to the voters. So if we change policy and procedure, we change policy and procedure. That's what Larry Krasner's doing in Philadelphia. That's what Kim Foxx is doing in Cook County, Chicago. They are changing the way the office operates and works and setting policies that are either not consistent with legislation or moving even more forward into a more progressive avenue than the legislation had initially determined.
I know it's normal for people to be incarcerated when they're found guilty of something serious, but you're concerned about other reasons for incarceration, let's say not being able to meet bail. Would you want to change that in some way?
For sure. I mean, we criminalize poverty every single day. If your viewership remembers when Harvey Weinstein walked in, $1 million bail, and was able to walk out. Even if he had an ankle bracelet or conditions, he is a free man able to do that. And it is because of his wealth that he's permitted to do so. We have individuals every single day that are sitting in Nashua Street because they're poor. The Mass Bail Fund, as of August 15th, had 84 cases where they had gone out and given bail to get somebody freed. The average amount of bail was about $600 to $700 for each of those people. Our prisons are now debtors' prisons. And what I want is, if you're going to be held, it's because you're dangerous. It's not because you're poor, or it's because you have defaulted several times and made it clear you are not going to show back up to court. Because a lot of non-lawyers don't understand, bail is about, will you come back to your next court date? It shouldn't be, we're going to hold you here because you can't afford it. And that's what we do every day. So New Jersey has moved to a no cash bail system. There are some pros and cons of that system. What's great is we have a couple other states that we can look at to see what they're doing well and to mirror that, and then to avoid the problems they've had. But I'm absolutely, when I win September 4th, I want to look at changing the cash bail system.
Thank you very much for being with us.
You bet. Thank you so much.
Rachael Rollins, candidate for Suffolk County DA. Up ahead, filling gaps in skills and job opportunities. We'll talk with the president of Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology.